I suppose for lots of people who aren't that familiar with Iran and post-revolutionary Iran, they would say, yeah, there's a real incongruence between its aspirations regionally and the limitations of its economy. And there is clearly a tension between economic development and the foreign policy choices that the country's made since 1979. Is that debate going on inside Iran? And to what extent is it a live debate? I mean, it seems very obvious to anyone in the UK, but obviously, as much as our media and political class in this country try and present Iranians or Muslims or Middle Easterners as stupid, they aren't. They're often very bright people. So where is that debate at?
This is the core debate in Iran. And it has been for some time, and it has accelerated and become bolder since Iran's war with Israel and the US bombing of Iran. And the reason for this is my view is that Iran is not today best explained in terms of theocracy or Islam or these kinds of shibboleths that we have in the West. It's rather the Islamic Republic came to power with the belief that it was liberating Iran from imperialism. It had a view that Iran had always been under the thumb of the West since the 19th century. They almost divided Iran, occupied Iran at various times, and that Iran basically survived imperialism by the skin of its teeth. And the revolutionaries that toppled the monarchy in 1979, be they democratic, liberal Democrats, secular Marxists, or Islamic fundamentalists, they all believe that Iran lost its independence in 1953 with the coup that they allege Britain and the United States supported. Now, we could quibble about whether the coup was genuinely micromanaged from London or Washington. We could quibble about, is it right to say that the Shah's monarchy between 1954 and 1979 was basically a puppet of the United States? But in the telling of the revolution, Iran was not an independent country. And I argue in my book that, in fact, Ayatollah Khomeini believed that the greatest achievement of the Islamic Republic was that it's the first government in Iran over a number of centuries to give Iran genuine independence. Like a few weeks ago, former Iranian foreign minister in an interview with an American outlet said that this government is the first to give Iran genuine independence in over 225 years. Now, I don't believe that to be true on a factual basis, but that's their truth. And so the entirety of the Islamic Republic's behavior since 1979 towards the United States, towards Israel, towards Arab governments that are allies of the United States, towards Britain, France, Germany, Europe, is that you want to take back that independence that we gave Iran. And we're going to fight you tooth and nail. So the narrative of the Islamic Republic, really at the core of it, once you brush away death to America, death to Israel, the theocracy, etc., is that we are defending Iran's independence. We are resisting the reimposition of imperialism on Iran. Now, increasingly, the Iranian public is not convinced of this. And as you mentioned, this is not convincing. And it is increasingly clear that there is a really, really high cost to this maintaining independence in the telling of the Islamic Republic. And the more these tensions are growing, the more this debate in Iran is intensifying. So you have whereas the leadership of Iran were all people who carried out the revolution in 1979. So their mindset is still the one that brought the revolution to power. Majority of Iranians were born after the revolution. So they don't necessarily share the idea that somehow 1979 was a moment of liberation. In fact, they may look at the pre-1979 era with certain degree of nostalgia for varieties of things. And so they're not buying into this idea that we need to resist the United States to be independent, number one. Number two, they're saying that if a foreign policy is so costly, there might be other ways of doing it, right? So, the cost is not just billions of dollars that you might pour into Iraq or Lebanon or Syria. It is Iran's isolation, the opportunity cost of not being integrated into the global economy. And so Iranians are intensely debating that it is very obvious to them that development and resistance cannot be complementary or are in fact zero-sum choices. The Islamic Republic is of the view, and the Supreme Leader often says, there is such a thing called resistance economy. We can develop despite the United States. We can develop without being integrated into the world economy. But the majority of Iranians don't believe that's possible. And so there are those in Iran who say we have to continue to resist. The United States, even in this 12-day war, proved that it's an enemy, that it wants to, undo us. It means us harm. And then there are those in Iran who say enough. This strategy of resistance that you followed has really reached its dead end. Not only it has reached its dead end because it's economically damaging and no longer sustainable, but because it has failed. You haven't actually defended Iran. The strategy that you followed has brought both war and economic misery at the same time. So I think Iran, in my opinion, is already in a post-revolution debate. I would say, Iran is not yet at the moment when Mao died or Brezhnev died, but it's already in that tunnel, in that 7 years that separated Mao from Deng Xiaoping, or the number of years that separated Brezhnev from Gorbachev. So already the debate is, how do we address our economic development needs around where our foreign policy has left us. And I would even say that the hope that the Iranians had in negotiating with President Trump or negotiating the nuclear deal in 2015 was an attempt to get out of this quandary. And that's why the Supreme Leader in Iran, who is the architect of resistance, allowed those negotiations, because it was a compromise to say, we'll give up certain things and you give up economic pressure. And so even nuclear negotiations should be understood in the context of this grand debate that you mentioned.